Hello, people. How are you doing? Holla at your boy. This is Dr. Will, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show. We are back from a long hiatus. I got lazy, had pneumonia, break happened. So I was out. So now I'm back, healthy, refreshed, on my break, relaxing, decided to bring the show back. And now I'm here with Jessica Raleigh, who is the personalized learning field manager with a school district in Colorado. Welcome, Jessica. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Will.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. And again, we're going to be talking about personalized professional learning. Okay, so Jessica, for those individuals in the know, and I mean they're connected, so they're going to hear the title, whatever, and they're going to be like, cool, I know what it is, but let me see if I can learn something different. But for those who don't know, they're just kind of scrolling on the internet. Maybe they hear about you, go to your blog, hear about me, go to my blog, or they're on YouTube, and they're like, what is personalized learning? Would you tell the people the definition of it?
Sure. My definition, and I always like to put in a little plug for Barbara Bray and Kathleen McClaskey. If you're not familiar with personalized learning and you're looking for just sort of what is it and how do I get started, they have an amazing website, an amazing blog. It's personalizelearning.com. And I was very fortunate to meet them at ISTE last year and talk to them about personalized learning. And I really love the way that it's very human-centered. And so for me, personalized learning is really about the student, about the learner. It's not about the teacher. It's not about even the facilitator of the learning, but it's really about how do we support the learner in taking charge of their own learning. So there's a lot of ownership in personalized learning. The student is really taking charge of what it is that they want to do. There's a lot of choice, and that could be choice over a lot of different things, and that will look different, like anything does, depending on the age of your learner and their needs. But essentially, it's looking at what are their strengths, what are their needs, what are their interests or their passions, and then giving them a lot of choice based on those things. And then also, with your students, you have standards and scope. So sort of looking at those things as well, and not saying we have to throw all of this out in order to do personalized learning, but it's saying, okay, if these are sort of our standards or our benchmarks, this is where we're headed, what choices can I give the students? So maybe students are focusing on a certain standard in math, but you can give them choice over the delivery. So some students might be learning things online, some might be doing something on paper and pencil, some might be creating something, painting. There was always a lot of art going on in my classroom when I was personalizing learning. So it's really a lot about the choices, looking at those strengths, needs, and interests, and then really putting those things back to the learner and asking them, okay, how are you going to demonstrate your learning? How are you going to learn it? How are you going to demonstrate it? And let them set their goals. This is where I came from. This is where I'm headed. This is where I'm at right now. And letting them really guide that path to learning. So, but definitely check out Barbara and Kathleen's blog. Really, really great stuff there.
Awesome, awesome. All righty. So when you are a school district, and okay, they've been to their blog, they've read the information. Maybe they bumped into them at ISTE, or they've bumped into you at ISTE or Ben, and they're excited. They're charged. Okay, they're going back. They're ready. They're like, we're pumped. Okay, so when people are deciding, okay, this is something we would like to implement into our district, what steps should they take?
That's a great question. I think it depends on who they are in terms of where in sort of the layers of a school district they might be. So if you're a teacher and you are looking into personalized learning, you're really excited about it, and that you're saying, yes, this is something I want to do, the first thing that you really need to do is look at your students, look at their needs, look at kind of what you have going on in your classroom, and then I really would say start small, and that applies to wherever you are. But especially if you're a teacher in your classroom, you don't need to throw out everything that you're doing and start from scratch. Really look at what is the foundation of something that's already here. Generally, teachers who are interested in personalized learning have a really good community already, and they've really built strong relationships with their students. It's so important, regardless of who your learners are, students or teachers, that if you're personalizing learning, you really have to have a good relationship. There has to be lots of trust there. So if you're a teacher, build on that foundation. Maybe pick one subject. Math is often sort of the easiest to start with personalized learning for a lot of teachers, just because it's a little bit more clear-cut. There's a lot more options with ed tech in terms of instruction. You've got some really great programs with IXL and 10 marks and lots of choices there that you can give to your students. But I would say if you're a principal and you're looking at what is this whole school going to look like, or if you're a district level person saying, what will personalized learning look like at the whole district, you really need to start with a vision. You need to start with, where do we want to be in 3 years? Where do we want to be in 5 years? Sort of the why. Why are we doing this? If you sort of jump in, it's great to be gung-ho and to jump in with both feet, but if you don't know where you're going, especially if you're at that level, you're the leader. You've got to sort of have a vision that you can show people, that you can share with people, so that they understand, where are we going together? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you can be the superintendent or the principal and say, yes, we're doing personalized learning, but if you're the only one who knows what that vision is and you're charging forward, you're going to leave everyone else behind. So you really need to start with that vision. In the work that we've done with our pilot blended learning sites, we always go in and we work with all the stakeholders. That includes teachers, students, leaders in the building. It also includes parents and community members. They're a really integral part of anything that you're going to do. They often get left behind, and people don't always talk to them and say, hey, as a parent, what would you like to see this look like? What will that look like at home? Will you be able to access your students' grades online? Would you like to be able to see what work that they're doing every day? It's important to bring them in. All of that is the team. It's really like the team that's behind the students that's going to make it happen. So it's important to include everyone, but to really have that clear vision, so that then you can say, oh, okay, I know where we're going. This is where we're at now, and sort of that gap analysis of, this is how we're going to get there.
Okay, so now you've talked to parents, you've talked to teachers, you've talked to admins, and all stakeholders are involved, and you have your vision, and you know where you want to go. What options or what tools are available to districts that they can use to start to implement personalized learning?
That's a great question. And when people start with blended or personalized, usually the first question is, what devices should I get? The second question is, what software should I buy? And those are the two questions that I had when I first started this work. I was in the classroom. I got told, you're going to be a pilot teacher for blended learning. And I said, yay, what is blended learning? Help me out here. So those are the two questions that I had, and I completely understand why your brain goes there. Now that I've gone through this whole process, looking back, I realize that those are the wrong two questions to start with, because it's really not about the tools and it's not about the devices. Yes, you have to look at those things, and I would say especially what you already have. And if you are getting funding for your pilot or for the program that you're implementing, you definitely need to make a decision about what devices are best, what software is best. And so if you're in that situation, I would say the best thing to do is look at what you already have, look at the comfortability of your teachers. If you have entire buildings of teachers who are not really comfortable with their email, you don't want to throw new devices and 5 new software programs at them. It's just going to be too much. And it's really, again, not about the programs. They need to start with the pedagogy. Anybody needs to start with the pedagogy and saying, why are we doing this? What does this look like? You can personalize learning without technology. It's really, really hard. And ultimately, I would say technology facilitates great personalized learning, but you can do it without technology. And so starting with, what is that, again, foundation that we already have here? What can we build on from there? And so maybe, again, if you're starting with math, then looking at really solid math instruction. How can I get students out there making their own choices? Well, if we need to have a program where students can self-pace through the content, that's how we're going to make those software choices. If we have kindergartners, we maybe want them to have a tablet versus a laptop. If you're a Google Apps for Education district, you might want to look at something like Chromebooks, because your students can really maximize the Google Apps suite, and you can start getting teachers more familiar with that. So I would say, again, go back and look at, it's almost like looking at the strengths, needs, and interests of the things that you have too, not just the people, and sort of doing an inventory of those things, and then really saying, okay, if this is where we're at, what's the next step, and what are 3 steps down the road, and then sort of starting on that progression. So it really all goes back to the learner, and that includes your teachers. You know, if your teachers don't feel comfortable with the things that you're giving them, it's not going to work. So it needs to be best for them. And, you know, I've been out of the classroom not even a full year yet, and I already feel very disconnected. And so I constantly have to go back to my teachers and say, what would this look like for you? If I handed this to you, or if I asked you to do this, what would that look like for you? Because they're the ones who are in there every day. They know the constraints that they've got and the things that are really challenging for them. And so I always have to ask them, how will this work for you? Because I'm not the one doing it every day, they are. And so I think that's a big miss for a lot of districts is not really connecting with the teachers. And that means more than a survey. You know, a lot of times we send surveys to our teachers and we say, okay, here's a Google form, fill it out, and then I'll give you everything you need. That's just not the best way to do it. You've got to build empathy. If you know anything about design thinking, you know that's really where you have to start. Is empathy building is not just asking people either. Like, you can just observe. Go get out in classrooms and just sit and watch. I learned so much just from watching 15 minutes in a classroom, and it reminds me, oh yeah, the teacher's dealing with this and this and this, and this is what it looks like for the kids. Then you can build your program around, again, those learners.
All right, cool. Now let me play an advocate. Okay, let me come at you from the opposite end, because I had a conversation with another instructional technologist, and she brought up too. We had a discussion over devices, and she was saying how you have to think about the students first, and which I agree with that. But on the opposite end, as I was going to her with, is you also need the infrastructure to handle certain devices. You need devices that have the Wi-Fi capability to work within the network you have. You also have to factor in costs, device management, particularly the ease of management, because Google, for example, their admin panel is very super beautifully easy. And you could have actually one person sitting somewhere. It could push out apps and lock down browsers for testing and all kind of stuff just right there. Or the teachers themselves could go in and say, okay, this is what I want. Where Apple isn't all that user-friendly when it comes to management. And so for me, those are certain things I take into account as well. So when you talk about teachers, when you talk about pedagogy and student learning, especially, let's say, from a position that you hold now, how do you balance that versus the real realities of hardware, software, and infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that goes back to sort of the difference between where I was when I was in the classroom and starting with this, and those things were on my mind, and that's the first thing that I had to think about. Someone said, okay, you're getting, I mean, we ultimately chose Chromebooks, and so you're getting one-to-one Chromebooks for your students. Great. Where's my cart? Where is it going to charge? In Denver, we have a lot of really old buildings, and so I know there's a lot of constraints and realities of every day, and one of mine was, if you plug the cart in, it will pop the breaker, and now you have no electricity. And so, like, I totally understand that side of things. My teammate and I would actually take the cart from one classroom to another every other night, alternating, because it would pop my breaker. Next day, I'd take it to her room. She'd charge it while someone came and fixed and we would just do that back and forth. So I know that everything sounds beautiful and easy, right? Like, just give them devices and it's great. There are really difficult things that go on, and those are the kind of things that can break your program, because as a teacher, I was 110% behind everything that we were doing, and there were days where I was just like, I changed my mind. Never mind, just take them back. I don't think I can do this every day. Like, I just want to teach, and so I totally understand that. I would say you have to look at your electricity and your infrastructure and your network, and you have to really look at even in building resources. You know, it's great if as the district you've got a strong ed tech department, but you might have more schools than you have ed tech professionals, and so each school really needs to be self-sufficient. So again, going back to sort of that inventory of who do we have in the schools. If we have somebody who's really strong with technology, maybe we have someone who's going to be in charge of the hardware and software, someone who's going to be looking more from the instructional side. Maybe you have lead teachers or a program in your district where you can develop lead teachers so that they can sort of be implementation leads or instructional leads, or they can take a coaching role part-time in the building. You know, you have to get really creative with your staffing when you start doing something like this. And a lot of times, again, our systems aren't built for this kind of teaching and learning. We have to kind of break the systems. It's sort of my dream to break the system, and I don't think we need to, again, start from scratch, but there are certain things that I want to break it. I want to be really creative and do something totally crazy, and make sure that every building has the resources that they need. And so when you're looking at your ed tech, you know, if you don't have someone in the building who's comfortable with iPads, maybe iPads aren't the right choice. You know, you might want to look at something that is easier to manage. And you also have to look at how the learners are going to be using the devices. It's so much easier now to use pretty much any device if you have web-based things, but you also have to think about if you've got students who are doing PARC or other standardized testing on the computer, well, they're going to be keyboarding. How are we going to teach keyboarding? What will that look like for our kids? If we give every kid an iPad, will they be ready in the spring for their standardized testing? You know, I have always felt like I was already doing test prep because my kids had Chromebooks, so they were keyboarding every day. And they were fourth graders, they started with, where's the S key? I can't find it. I didn't teach any keyboarding whatsoever the whole year. By January, the kids were just bopping away. I'm one of those teachers who's not really concerned about home keys and those kinds of things. Kids text with their thumbs, they text with one finger faster than you know I could with home keys. So that's not something I'm concerned with, but I knew I was preparing them for those things too. So you have to take that into consideration. If you've got students who need keyboarding, you got to give them a keyboard. So, you know, and leveraging, a lot of people got, you know, money for devices in their building for testing. A lot of times we see those devices are sitting somewhere until they get pulled out for testing. So how can you get creative, pull those things out into classrooms, and then use them for instruction, which again, you're supporting the testing because the kids will be ready for it. So I never like to teach to the test, but you can actually get a bigger bang for your buck if you kind of look at all the resources that you have.
Okay. So let's stay with the idea of breaking the system. When you start transitioning to, let's say, blended learning in the classroom, where you can definitely personalize the learning, or you want to say personalized learning from a school site or district level for teachers, you're going to run into a situation, generally speaking, where you're going to have teachers who this is their first year teaching to someone who's been teaching 15 years, 20 years, and still around at 30, which you got your 30 in, let's take a rest. I don't know about you, but it's vacation time for me. All right. But they've been programmed to teach a certain way. They've been teaching a certain way. They have, I'm married to a teacher. My oldest sister's a teacher. So these teachers have binders and cabinets and drawers full of paper materials that they've been using year after year after year. Even the conferences they go to. I'm an ELA teacher. I'm going to this ELA-based conference. Everything is about a certain way of teaching. Now you bring in blended learning, where can you personalize learning without technology? Yes, as you mentioned, it is hard as the dickens to do. So that's why technology really is easier to facilitate that type of learning. So now that means choosing an LMS, in my opinion. And so now teachers have to be comfortable not only with the different models of blended learning and which blended learning model will work best with their strengths, individual teaching strategies, methods, as well as the needs of their students, but it's the whole shift in mindset of this isn't sort of my show, you know. And now I have to also find online resources to put inside that LMS, etc. So, what is your advice? How do you work with teachers to get them to shift that mindset? Because this is a whole new ball game for them. I mean, they literally have to somewhat shake off everything they've learned beforehand and to begin anew.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I have a basement full of teacher stuff, so I totally know, what it's like to sort of go through that transition. And I'm really techie, and I've always been really techie. So I know that for a teacher who really relies on those things, it is really difficult. And again, it goes back to we're not getting rid of everything that's going on and just starting from scratch. A lot of times people say, well, but we're doing everything with technology, so I have to relearn everything. No, you don't. You just have to learn technology. These teachers are doing amazing things in their classroom. These teachers have really, really strong classroom management, really, really strong behavior, really, really strong relationships with their kids and community building. These teachers have great instructional practices, and so all you're doing is saying, okay, let's look at what you're doing already. How can we start to infuse technology? For the ones who are really reluctant, I like to show them, here's how I can make your life better. Here's how I can take what you're doing and make it stronger and make it easier for you, so that now, instead of differentiating for 10 different reading groups, making copies of books and trying to highlight certain sections and print them out and cut them and put, like, oh my goodness, the things that teachers do to differentiate for their kids and to really try to meet their needs, it's mind-boggling. And so if you look at some of those things and then you say, hey, what if I told you, instead of spending 3 hours every week making copies from your benchmark books, instead you could pull passages up online and you can copy and paste, you can email them to your kids, and boom, they walk in the morning, they open their computer, and there's the passage you want them to read. They can annotate it, they can send it back to you, they can read it out loud to you, and you can listen to it at home on your couch. Like, there's all these things that technology can provide for teachers that are taking the things they're already trying to do and make it really strong and make it a lot easier. And so blended learning is really a teacher multiplier. It's getting the teacher to not have to be the one delivering the content all the time. I was able to have groups learning their content and getting their instruction in other ways so that I could really be working with kids and conferencing with them. And I spent so much more time actually finding out where my kids were, talking to them, working on specific skills or things that they needed additional help with, pushing my gifted kids a little bit harder, getting them to go deeper with things. I was able to do all of that so much faster and better because I had technology in my classroom. It wasn't just, oh gosh, I've got to make more copies to keep the kids busy. No, they're learning. They're learning every minute of every day, and they're guiding their own learning. So it's just really about taking those strong practices. Teachers are amazing. They're doing absolutely incredible things in their classrooms. Build on that. Don't tear that down. Don't take that away from them, and show them, because a lot of teachers don't realize that what they're doing is really great. So tell them that, show them that, and then say, here's where technology comes in. I always start with a unit. When I'm helping teachers, they say, okay, we're going to have the cart for a month. What do I do? Well, let's look at your unit. You've already got it built out. This is a great unit. Now let's look at where we can pull things in. Oh, kids are doing timelines. Great. Let's go find a timeline program where kids can build their own timelines. We've got research going on. You can use Google Docs so that as they're doing their writing, you're not just looking at it at the end, but you can be looking at it throughout the whole process of writing and really pushing their writing further. Kids can be giving peer feedback and commenting on each other's writing, all that kind of stuff, and it opens teachers' eyes to the possibilities, and then they start to realize, oh, I am doing really great things already. Now this is just going to help make it better.
Excellent, excellent. So now let's take it to the school or district level where we are now bringing that type of learning into professional development. Now, Twitter is fantastic. We all know it. We love it. Those who are connected are doing it. But the limitation to Twitter is it does not facilitate a group dynamic. It is really about the individual personalizing their own individual learning, which is fantastic. And I still think that schools and districts should bring that to teachers to get them connected in that way. But you also, in my opinion, have to think of that macro level in terms of sharing that beautifulness. And what I mean by that is even in my own job, I have traveled through all of the schools in our district, and I could be observing a class where this teacher's class, let's say she's doing order of operations, for example. That class is rocking. It's like a Jay-Z concert in that bad boy. This is beautiful. You know, you're like, wow, did I pay admission to this show? Because this bad boy's on. But then you go to another teacher's classroom, and it's like Mozart in there, and it's like, where's the energy? You know, and I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but what you are seeing is differences in the teaching approach with resources, etc. And that's where, let's say, communities of practice coming in, because now you have the ability for teachers throughout the district to now share a collective of resources, now engage each other on that level to say, hey, I'm actually teaching order of operations. This is my lesson plan. Who else has a lesson plan they would like to share? And now they can ask each other questions like, oh, I never thought to use that resource. I'm going to take that from you, and ask each other questions, et cetera, et cetera. So how do schools, if they're going to go this route to build that community of practice, to be able to engage everyone, to get those resources flowing, to get that dialogue going, what are the steps should a school site or district take to do that, and what tools are available to facilitate that type of learning?
I think it really starts with the culture and building that really strong culture in your schools, in your district, to say, we're going to try something new, and we're all in this together, and you really sort of have to do a level set of, some of us are going to be in different places with different things. We're going to be all over the place. That's okay. That's great, because that means we have other people to learn from. You're going to be really strong at something. The guy sitting next to you is going to be strong at something else. You can learn, from that. It's the same thing that we do with our students in our classrooms. And so I think it really starts with just sort of opening up the doors of your classroom and building that culture and making it okay to say, hey, yesterday I tried this thing and it failed miserably. It was just a mess. Nothing went right. And now, because of that, I learned all these things, and here's what I'm going to try tomorrow. Like, sometimes we learn so much more from the risks that we take and the things that fall flat, because that's like super fast learning. When things go okay, we can kind of see a tweak that might make it better. When things bomb, man, you can see 7 things right away. Oh, I should have done this and this and this, and this is how I'm going to make it better. And so I think the culture really has to embrace not just celebrating success, but also celebrating failure. And a lot of people are very adverse to failure, especially in education. It's ingrained in us. Don't tell people that you messed up. Don't do it. Like, there's so much pressure. There's so much at stake for teachers and for school leaders. And so it's hard to put yourself out there. And so I'd say also for leadership, it involves modeling all of that, taking risks, trying things. There's amazing leaders who I've connected with on Twitter who put themselves out there and model that risk-taking for their staff. And when they fail at something, they tell everyone, oh my gosh, guys, I failed at this. This is what I thought was going to happen. Instead, it was this. Here's how I'm going to fix it. And that opens it up, and that culture starts to build where the teachers feel more comfortable with that. And then the district starts to see, oh, this is kind of what we're doing. Parents get more comfortable with it. Kids get more comfortable with it. And so really it goes back to building that culture. And then if you are going to have a space, if you want a space that's online, look at what platforms you already have. If you're a Google Apps district, definitely the Google Plus communities are an amazing place to start. There are great communities out there already, and then you can also build your own. Here in DPS, we have a lot of schools who've created their own Google Plus community just for their school. Teachers can go on there and share things that are going on, and You know, they can share events, and they can say, hey, even just little things like my mathletics club is going to a meet next week. If anybody wants to come by, we're going to be in the gym at 4. That builds culture. It's that team rallying together and saying all of the staff, all of the students, all of the families, we're in this together, and we're coming together in the best interest of the kids. So Google Plus communities are a great place to do that, to share problems of practice. Twitter is also a great place to do it. You know, if you have a school or district hashtag that you can share with, that's, you know, it is a little bit more about the individual, but you can really see communities start to sort of form based on those hashtags for your school or your district, and people rallying together that way. So just find those places where you can build culture. And sometimes that means putting up a bulletin board in the hallway and saying, hey, we're going to celebrate the awesome things that are going on with pictures. If you see a teacher doing something awesome, snap a photo, throw it on the bulletin board. Like, it doesn't always have to be a really big deal. It doesn't have to be a lot of lead time. It doesn't have to be online. You know, you can start small with just a bulletin board and snap a picture of the bulletin board every month and throw it on Twitter. You know, those kinds of things are great places to start too. So there's any number of things you can do, but really it goes back to how are you building a really strong culture of sharing and celebrating and risk-taking.
Excellent, excellent. So this has been awesome and very fantastic. I'm alive, you know, I'm feeling good. So let's bring this home. What sort of are your final thoughts for those individuals who have interest? They've watched the show, that you have delivered some fantastic advice, very concrete, but they're still kind of, this is beautiful, I like it, but I don't know. What's your final thoughts on sort of bringing it home for them to, I wouldn't necessarily say convince them, but to build on, based upon your experience, building upon the evidence that we have all read about, why should they sort of embark on the journey of personalized learning?
Wow, that's a great question. Because it's magical. It really is. It's, you know, when I think back to certain moments, and it's chaotic and it's insane, and sometimes it's way more work, especially up front when we're first starting out. It is a lot of work. You know, we don't always say that. We make it sound like we're going to give you technology and you're going to personalize and then your life's going to be great. You're not going to be 8 to 4 when you start this. Like, it's just not going to happen. But it's going to make what you do more impactful. And the things that you're passionate about, you'll be able to really see that grow and spread in your classroom with your kids. And you'll have moments where you're wondering, why did I do this? I don't know if this was a good idea. That's teaching, right? Like, we all have those moments regardless of what we're doing. But those moments that you stand back and you look at what's going on in your classroom, and it's like the light bulbs are going off and the kids are owning their learning and they're speaking so eloquently. You know, I had some 4th graders who were invited to present at a district PD last year and talk about using Chromebooks in the classroom, and every single question that got fired at them from the teachers, these 9-year-olds were just, oh, well, because da-da-da-da, and you need to think about, you know, what you're doing here and how this works. And I was just standing there, like, I couldn't have paid them to say things more beautifully. And that's when you know it's working, because at the end of the day, I don't get to be with my kids every minute. I am going to have to send them off at the end of a year, at the end of 3 years, however long you get with your kiddos, they're leaving. You're not always going to be there. That's what we're trying to do, is prepare them for the real world. And blended learning and personalized learning is doing that, because they are in charge of their learning. They're not waiting around for someone else to say, okay, now learn this. They're saying, I want to learn that, and this is how I'm going to do it, and they go for it. And we always talk about, you know, creating lifelong learners. This does it. It's absolutely amazing. The things that you'll see happening and taking off in your classroom, the way that the kids can talk about their learning and really guide and drive their own learning, it's brilliant. It's like nothing else that you can see. And it also is just, it's exciting, and it keeps your classroom alive. Every day your classroom is sort of just that buzz and that hum of learning, and and it's fun. We want learning to be fun, and I think it brings that in, and it engages them, and it engages teachers too. So, the proof is sort of in the pudding, I guess.
Awesome, awesome. So, folks, thanks for coming back to the Dr. Will Show, and I hope today has been encouraging, has been enlightening, and delightful, basically. And you have gotten some great information. This is going to be posted on my blog and on YouTube, and as well, there'll be some information to be able to connect with Jessica on Twitter and to be able to take this conversation further. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for watching another episode of the Dr. Will Show, and I thank you, Jessica, for being a fantastic guest.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great fun, and I look forward to connecting with everyone and being part of your journey of personalized learning.
Awesome.